The man in the $10,000 suit slapped a photo on the counter so hard the napkin holder jumped. "Listen carefully," he said, voice sharp like a blade. "We are looking for Daniel Carter Montgomery Lawrence." Brittany didn't even get a chance to greet him. The suit leaned in, eyes cold. "The CEO of CML Industries, missing for 6 months. $4 billion. A board ready to riot." The whole diner went silent. Forks stopped. Coffee stopped pouring. Even the grill in the back felt quieter. Brittany stared at the photo. A clean-shaven man in a perfect suit. Calm smile. Billionaire face. Then she looked up. "Sir, this is a diner." The suit's mouth twisted. "Don't play dumb." Another man stepped forward, taller, older, wearing a coat that screamed money. "Our cameras caught him walking near this street last month. We traced a phone signal. We traced witnesses. And now we're here." Brittany's throat went dry. "I don't know anything about that." The first suit laughed once. Not funny, more like insult. "You serve eggs, right?" he said, looking around like the place smelled bad. "Then serve eggs and stay out of adult problems." A few customers gasped. Martha in the kitchen slammed something metal. Brittany's face burned, but she held her voice steady. "Sir, you can't talk to people like that." The suit turned his head slowly. Like he couldn't believe a waitress had spoken back. He pointed at her name tag. "Brittany." He said it like it was a joke. "Let me educate you," he whispered. "This man owns companies that can buy this town. If you're hiding him, you're in danger. If you helped him, you're in danger. If you even spoke to him." He leaned closer. "You're gonna wish you hadn't." Brittany felt her heart hammering. But then she heard it, a calm voice from the corner booth. "Richard." Just one word. The suited man froze. Slowly he turned. In the corner booth sat the homeless man Brittany had been feeding for weeks. Dirty coat, rough beard, old boots. But his posture was straight. His eyes were clear. And his voice sounded like he had never begged for anything in his life. Richard's face drained of color. "Sir," Brittany whispered, barely breathing, "do you know him?" The homeless man lifted his coffee slowly and said, "Brittany, don't move." Why was he warning her? What was about to happen? The diner felt like it had stopped breathing. Every customer turned toward the corner booth. Brittany looked from the homeless man to the expensive suits, then back again. None of it made sense. The man called Richard stared at the booth like he had seen a ghost. "Sir," he said slowly. The homeless man didn't answer right away. He simply placed the coffee cup on the table with calm, deliberate control. Then he stood. The movement alone changed the room. He didn't look homeless anymore. Not the way he held his shoulders. Not the way his eyes moved across the room like he was used to people listening when he spoke. Richard straightened his jacket immediately. "Yes, sir," he said again, quieter now. Brittany blinked. 5 seconds ago, this man had been talking to her like she was invisible. Now he sounded like an employee in front of a boss. "What are you doing here?" Richard asked. The man in the booth brushed dust off his coat. "I believe," he said calmly, "that question belongs to me." His voice had changed. Gone was the rough tone Brittany had heard for weeks. Now it sounded smooth, controlled, educated, the kind of voice that had ended arguments in boardrooms. The other suited men shifted nervously. One whispered, "That's him. It has to be him." Richard shot him a sharp look. Then he forced a tight smile. "You've had your little vacation," Richard said carefully, "but the board has been extremely patient." "Vacation?" the man repeated. His eyes flicked toward Brittany for half a second. Something passed across his face. Then it disappeared. "I told the board," he said quietly, "that I needed time." "And the board told you," Richard snapped, "that the Harrington merger is collapsing." He stepped closer. $2 billion, Daniel." The name hit the room like thunder. Brittany's stomach dropped. "Daniel?" She looked back at the photo still lying on the counter. Then slowly, she looked back at the man in the corner. The beard, the worn coat, the tired eyes. But now she saw something else, the same jawline, the same eyes, the same calm expression. "No," she whispered. Daniel Carter Montgomery Lawrence, the missing billionaire, CEO, the man the news had been talking about for months. He had been sitting in her diner, eating eggs she had paid for, sleeping in the alley behind the building. Her mind refused to accept it. "That's impossible," she said softly. Richard turned toward her like she had just spoken out of turn. "You," he said with thin irritation, "bring him his coat." Daniel lifted a hand. "Richard!" The single word stopped him instantly. The billionaire's gaze moved slowly around the diner, over the shocked customers, over the staff frozen behind the counter. Finally, it settled on Brittany. She had never seen him look like this before. Not tired, not quiet, not broken. Powerful, dangerously calm. "Brittany," he said. Her name sounded different coming from him now, like it carried weight. "Sir?" she said without thinking. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. "You never called me that before." Her chest tightened, because suddenly every memory rushed back. The quiet conversations. The way he had asked questions no one else asked. The day she found him crying in the alley when his mother died. The way he had said kindness mattered. Her voice shook. "You lied to me." The words came out before she could stop them. The entire diner went silent again. Richard looked stunned that someone would speak to Daniel that way. But Daniel didn't get angry. He just looked at her, and something painful flickered in his eyes. "I never said I was poor," he replied softly. The sentence hit her harder than if he had yelled, because she realized something terrible. He was right. He had never actually said it. She had assumed. Richard clapped his hands once impatiently. "Enough," he said. "This little performance is over." He turned toward the door. "We have a helicopter waiting. The board wants you in New York in 3 hours." Daniel didn't move. Instead, he rolled up his sleeve. Brittany saw it clearly now. The tattoo. A phoenix rising from flames. And beneath it, the letters CML. The same logo she had seen on skyscrapers. The same logo printed on half the tech magazines in America. Her knees almost gave out. "Oh my God," she whispered. Daniel looked at her. But before he could say anything, Richard suddenly smiled. Not a friendly smile, a dangerous one. "Well," Richard said slowly, looking between them, "this explains a lot." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" Richard chuckled quietly. "It means," he said, "that the media is going to love this story." Daniel's expression darkened instantly. "What story?" Richard's grin widened. "The story," he said softly, "about the billionaire CEO who pretended to be homeless." Brittany's stomach dropped, because the way he said it sounded less like news and more like a trap. And suddenly she realized something terrifying. Richard hadn't been looking for Daniel. He had been looking for a scandal, and Brittany had just become part of it. Richard's smile spread slowly. It was the kind of smile that made Brittany's stomach turn. "The story writes itself," he said calmly. "A billionaire CEO disappears for 6 months, pretends to be homeless, and secretly dates a diner waitress." Several of the suited men shifted uncomfortably. Daniel didn't. But Brittany saw something change in his eyes. Not fear. Calculation. "Richard," Daniel said quietly, "think very carefully about what you say next." Richard laughed. Too late for that. He pulled a phone from his pocket and held it up, because the story already leaked. The room went cold. "What?" Daniel said. "Oh yes," Richard continued casually. "Every major financial network is running it right now." He turned the screen toward him. A headline glowed across the display. "Billionaire CEO's secret homeless experiment exposed." Daniel's jaw tightened. Brittany felt like someone had punched her in the chest. "What did you do?" Daniel asked slowly. Richard shrugged. "I didn't do anything." But his tone said the opposite. "You sabotaged the company," Daniel said. "No," Richard replied smoothly. "You did that all by yourself." He gestured around the diner. "Look at you. The dirty coat, the beard, the cheap booth. You disappeared from a multi-billion-dollar corporation to play dress-up in an alley." Daniel's voice hardened. I stepped away. "You abandoned your responsibilities," Richard snapped, while the board panicked, while investors panicked, while the stock price started shaking. He stepped closer, and now the world gets to see the truth. Daniel didn't blink. "The truth?" Richard's grin sharpened. "That you turned poverty into a little social experiment." He glanced at Brittany. "And that this poor waitress was part of it." Brittany felt every eye in the diner swing toward her. "What?" she whispered. Richard lifted the phone again. The screen showed photos. Her. Daniel. The diner booth. The alley. Even the moment she handed him food. "People love stories like this," Richard said lightly. "Billionaires pretending to suffer, playing poor for entertainment." "That's not what happened," Brittany said. Richard tilted his head. "Oh? Then explain it." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out, because from the outside, it looked exactly like that. Daniel stepped forward. "Leave her out of this." "Impossible," Richard replied. "She's already trending." Brittany's chest tightened. "Trending?" Richard scrolled through the phone. "Look at this one," he said. "Waitress unknowingly becomes part of billionaire publicity stunt." Quote. Another headline, "PR genius OR poverty tourism." Brittany felt the floor tilt. "This isn't real," she whispered. Richard's eyes gleamed. "Oh, it's very real." Daniel's voice turned ice cold. "You leaked it." Richard shrugged again. "Who can say?" Daniel stepped closer. "You've been trying to replace me for years." Now Richard's smile faded. "For years," he said quietly, "I've been the one actually running your company." He gestured toward the door. "While you were off rediscovering your soul." Daniel's eyes sharpened. "So this was your move." Richard leaned in slightly. "You handed me the knife." Silence filled the diner. Then Richard straightened his jacket. "Well," he said, "this has been entertaining." Quote. He looked toward Brittany. "I recommend you check the news." Then he walked toward the door. The other executives followed. The bell above the entrance rang as they left. And just like that, the room exploded. Customers started talking all at once. Phones came out. Someone shouted, "Oh my God, that's him!" Another person was already recording video. "Is that the billionaire guy?" Brittany couldn't breathe. She turned slowly toward Daniel. "Tell me he's lying." Daniel didn't answer immediately. His eyes were locked on the door Richard had just walked through. Finally, he spoke. "He leaked it." "That's not what I asked." He turned to her. His voice softened. "I never meant for you to get caught in this." The words hit her like a slap. "So it is true?" "No. But you were pretending to be homeless." "Yes." Her chest tightened. "And you let me believe you needed help." "I never asked for it." "But you took it." He didn't answer, and that silence hurt worse than anything. "Why?" she asked quietly. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. 6 months ago, he said, I woke up in my penthouse and realized something terrifying. What? That nobody around me was real. He gestured around the diner. Everyone wanted something. Investors, politicians, executives. He looked at her. Even friends. His voice lowered. So, I disappeared. To test people? Brittany asked. To find the truth. And what was the truth? Daniel's gaze softened. That kindness still exists. Her chest tightened again. But now, he continued quietly, Richard just turned it into a scandal. A customer shouted from across the diner, Hey! The news says you're dating the waitress. Phones turned toward Brittany again. Her face burned. She suddenly felt exposed, used, embarrassed. You should leave, she said. Daniel looked stunned. Brittany. You should leave, she repeated. Her voice was shaking now. You just blew up my life. I didn't leak the story. But you created it. The words hung between them. Daniel swallowed. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. Her voice cracked. Do you have any idea what this looks like? Daniel stepped closer. Let me fix it. You can't fix it. I can. How? She demanded. With money? Quote. He flinched. Because that's what everyone thinks now, she said. That I was just part of some billionaire experiment. Brittany, I trusted you. Silence. For a moment, the entire diner seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them. The waitress. And the billionaire. You said kindness cost nothing, Daniel said quietly. Her eyes filled with tears. Yes. And you meant it. I still do. He nodded slowly. But the world doesn't. The weight of that truth sat between them. Then Brittany stepped back. I need space. Daniel didn't move. Please, she said, for the first time since she had met him. Daniel Carter Montgomery Lawrence looked powerless. Finally, he nodded. I'll be at the Madison Hotel, he said quietly. Room 412. He hesitated. If you want the truth, come find me. Then he walked toward the door. The bell rang again, and Brittany watched the man she thought she knew disappear into the street. But she didn't know something yet. Richard wasn't done, because at that exact moment, Richard was sitting inside a black car across the street, watching the diner through tinted glass, and smiling, because phase 1 of his plan had worked perfectly. 3 days passed, 3 long, exhausting days, and Brittany's life turned into chaos. The news channels wouldn't stop talking about the story. Every screen in the diner played the same headline on repeat. Billionaire CEO's secret homeless experiment exposed. Experts debated it. Commentators mocked it. And strangers on the internet decided Brittany was either a gold digger or a victim. She hated both. Customers whispered when she walked past. Phones pointed at her like cameras. Someone even tried to take a selfie beside her booth. Martha shut that down immediately. Out, she told the man flatly. But, out. The door slammed behind him. Brittany stood behind the counter gripping a coffee pot so tightly her knuckles turned white. I didn't sign up for this, she muttered. You didn't do anything wrong, Martha said. Brittany laughed bitterly. That's not what the internet thinks. She slid a phone across the counter. Martha glanced down. The screen showed another headline. Waitress at center of billionaire PR stunt. Brittany rubbed her temples. I can't even walk to work without people staring. Martha looked at her carefully. Have you spoken to him? No. Why? Brittany's voice hardened. Because the last time I trusted a billionaire pretending to be homeless, it ended up on national television. Martha didn't respond, but the silence said plenty. Brittany knew what she was thinking, that she was running away. Maybe she was, but every time Brittany remembered the moment in the diner. The moment Richard showed the headlines, the humiliation came rushing back. She didn't want to feel that again. Across town, Daniel Carter Montgomery Lawrence sat alone in a hotel room. Room 412, the same room he had told Brittany about. His phone vibrated constantly on the table. Board members, lawyers, investors. He ignored them all. The television in the corner played a financial news network. Questions about Daniel Lawrence's mental fitness as CEO. Daniel muted it. Then he stared at the city skyline through the window. His beard was gone now. His hair trimmed. The billionaire mask had returned. But he looked tired, exhausted. A knock sounded on the door. Daniel already knew who it was. Come in. The door opened. Richard stepped inside without asking permission. Perfect suit, perfect smile, perfect confidence. You look terrible, Richard said pleasantly. Daniel didn't turn around. You leaked it. Richard chuckled. Still stuck on that theory? Daniel faced him now. Only one person benefits from this. Richard walked across the room casually. Actually, he said, a lot of people benefit. He picked up the remote and unmuted the TV. The board of CML Industries has scheduled an emergency meeting to discuss temporary leadership changes. Daniel's eyes hardened. You're making your move. Richard shrugged. You vanished for 6 months. You sabotaged me." Quote, "You sabotaged yourself." Richard sat in a chair like he owned the place. "The investors are nervous," he continued. "The board is nervous. The media thinks you lost your mind." Daniel said nothing. Richard leaned forward. "You pretended to be homeless, Daniel." His smile widened. "I couldn't have written a better scandal if I tried." Daniel stepped closer. "You underestimated one thing." "Oh? You think I care about the company more than anything?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "Don't you?" Daniel's answer was quiet. "No." Richard blinked. That response clearly wasn't part of his plan. "I walked away from that life once already," Daniel continued. "I can do it again." Richard studied him carefully. Then he laughed. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Yes." Richard stood slowly. "Because if you walk away now, you lose everything." Daniel's eyes didn't move. "Everything except the one thing that matters." Richard frowned slightly. "And what's that?" Daniel didn't answer. He didn't need to. Richard followed his gaze toward the diner across the street. Understanding flashed across his face. "Oh." His smile returned. "The waitress." Daniel's expression darkened. "Leave her out of this." Richard laughed again. "You really don't understand how power works, do you?" Daniel's voice dropped. "Explain it to me." Richard stepped closer. "Power," he said quietly, "is leverage." His eyes glittered. "And right now, she's yours." Daniel's fists tightened. "If you touch her—" Richard held up a hand. "Relax." He walked toward the door. "I'm not the villain here, Daniel." He paused before leaving. "I'm just the man who finishes what you started." The door closed. Daniel stood there in silence. Then his phone buzzed again. This time he answered. "Yeah?" His lawyer's voice came through the line. "You need to see this." "What is it?" Quote, "Richard just scheduled a press conference." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "When?" "Tonight." "What's he announcing?" A pause. Then the lawyer said something that made Daniel go still. "He's announcing your replacement." Across town, Brittany finished her shift late that night. She stepped outside the diner and wrapped her coat tighter. The street felt colder than usual, quieter. She started walking toward the bus stop. Then her phone buzzed, a notification. She opened it and froze. The headline glowed on the screen, "CML Board to remove Daniel Lawrence as CEO." Brittany's stomach dropped. She read the article quickly. Richard claiming Daniel had become unstable. Richard claiming the company needed new leadership. Richard positioning himself as the solution. Something about it felt wrong. Very wrong. Then another notification appeared. This one wasn't from a news site. It was a message. Unknown number. Brittany opened it slowly. The text read, "He's destroying Daniel's life." Her heart skipped. Another message appeared. "And you're the reason he finally can." Brittany's hands started shaking. Then the final message arrived. "If you want the truth, come to the Madison Hotel, room 412. She stared at the screen. The same room Daniel had mentioned. The same place she promised herself she would never go. But suddenly, she wasn't so sure anymore. Because if Richard was really taking Daniel's company, then the story wasn't over. It was just getting started. And Brittany was about to discover that Richard's plan went much deeper than anyone imagined. Brittany stood on the sidewalk outside the Madison Hotel for almost 5 minutes. The glass doors reflected her nervous expression back at her. Her heart was pounding. Part of her wanted to turn around and go home. Forget Daniel. Forget Richard. Forget the entire mess. But the message kept echoing in her head. He's destroying Daniel's life. And the worst part? She believed it. Brittany pushed the door open. The hotel lobby was quiet and expensive. Marble floors, soft lighting, a piano playing somewhere in the background. She suddenly felt very out of place in her diner uniform. The receptionist looked up politely. "Can I help you?" Brittany hesitated, then said, "Room 412. The woman nodded toward the elevators. He's expecting you. Brittany blinked. Expecting her? Her stomach twisted as the elevator climbed. Fourth floor. The doors slid open. Room 412 was at the end of the hall. Her hand hovered over the door. Then she knocked. The door opened immediately. Daniel stood there. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He looked worse than she remembered. Dark circles under his eyes. His shoulders heavy with exhaustion. But when he saw her, relief flashed across his face. You came. Brittany crossed her arms. Don't read into it. He stepped aside. Come in. The room looked exactly like she imagined. Elegant, but quiet. Daniel closed the door behind her. Did you send the message? She asked. No. Her stomach dropped. Then who did? Before Daniel could answer, a voice spoke from the couch. I did. Brittany turned. A young man in glasses stood up slowly. He looked nervous but determined. Daniel frowned. Alex? The man nodded. I'm sorry, sir. Brittany looked between them. Who is he? Daniel rubbed his forehead. My head of cybersecurity. Alex lifted his hands slightly. Former head. Daniel's eyes narrowed. What happened? Alex swallowed. I was fired yesterday. Quote. Brittany felt a chill run through her spine. By Richard, she guessed. Alex nodded. Daniel stepped closer. Why? Alex hesitated. Then he said the words that changed everything. Because I found proof. Daniel froze. Proof of what? Alex opened a laptop on the table. The screen filled with documents. Emails, financial records, internal reports. All of this, Alex said quietly, leads back to Richard. Daniel's expression hardened. Explain. Alex took a breath. For 3 years, Richard has been leaking company secrets to competitors. Brittany gasped. What? Daniel's voice turned ice cold. And the money? Quote. Alex clicked another file. Hidden accounts. Millions of dollars moving through shell companies. Daniel stared at the screen. He's been stealing from CML. Alex nodded slowly. And that's not the worst part. Daniel looked up. What else? Quote. Alex turned the laptop toward Brittany. A news article appeared. The same scandal headline. Billionaire CEO's secret homeless experiment. Alex pointed at the metadata. This article was uploaded to the network before it went public. Daniel's jaw tightened. By Richard. Yes. Brittany's chest tightened, so he set the whole thing up. Daniel nodded slowly. He needed a scandal big enough to remove me. Alex continued. And your disappearance gave him the perfect opportunity. Brittany looked at Daniel. You weren't supposed to disappear that long, were you? Daniel shook his head. No. How long? A few weeks. Her eyes widened. But you stayed 6 months. He looked at her. Because I met you. The room went quiet. Alex awkwardly looked at the floor. Brittany tried to ignore the warmth creeping into her chest. Focus, she said quickly. What happens now? Daniel leaned against the table. If we expose Richard, the board will remove him. Alex nodded. But we need hard evidence. Daniel gestured to the laptop. Isn't that enough? Alex shook his head. No. Why not? Because Richard controls the internal investigation. Daniel swore under his breath. So we need something public. Yes. Quote. Brittany suddenly realized something. Wait. Both men looked at her. You said Richard is holding a press conference tonight. Daniel nodded slowly. Yes. Her eyes widened. That's it. Daniel frowned. What is? Quote. You expose him there. Alex blinked. In front of the media? Yes. Daniel considered it. That's dangerous. Good, Brittany said. Both men looked surprised. Richard thinks he's already won, she continued. He's about to stand in front of every camera in the country and announce your replacement. Daniel's eyes sharpened. And you want to ruin that moment? She nodded. Exactly. A slow smile spread across Daniel's face. For the first time in days. He looked like the billionaire CEO again. Public humiliation, he said quietly. Brittany shrugged. He started it. Alex looked between them. This might actually work. Daniel straightened. Then we do it. He turned to Brittany. You don't have to be involved. She laughed. Oh no. He frowned. What? You dragged me into this mess, she said. I'm finishing it. Quote. Daniel studied her carefully. You're serious? Very. A spark of admiration appeared in his eyes. All right. He extended his hand. Partners? Brittany looked at it, then shook it firmly. Partners. Across town, Richard stood behind a stage curtain inside a crowded press hall. Cameras, journalists, bright lights, everything exactly how he wanted it. An assistant walked up to him. 5 minutes. Richard nodded. Perfect. Soon he would step on that stage and announce that Daniel Carter Montgomery Lawrence was finished. He adjusted his tie confidently. There was just one small detail he didn't know. Daniel was coming, and this time, he wasn't coming alone. The press hall was packed, rows of cameras, journalists whispering, bright lights pointed at the stage. Everyone was waiting. Richard stood behind the podium, adjusting his cufflinks like a man who had already won. A reporter called out, "Is it true Daniel Lawrence is being removed as CEO?" Richard smiled politely. The board will be making an announcement shortly. Another reporter raised a hand. Is the scandal about the homeless experiment the reason? Richard sighed, performing concern perfectly. CML Industries takes ethical conduct very seriously. The crowd murmured. Exactly the reaction he wanted. He leaned closer to the microphone. Unfortunately, Mr. Lawrence's recent behavior has forced the board to consider leadership changes for the stability of the company. A few reporters began typing immediately, headlines forming in real time. Then the back doors opened. The sound echoed across the room. Heads turned. Daniel walked in. The room erupted. Daniel! Mr. Lawrence! Are you still CEO? Flashbulbs exploded. Richard's smile froze. Daniel walked calmly down the center aisle. No security, no assistance, just quiet confidence. But he wasn't alone. Brittany walked beside him, and Alex followed behind them carrying a laptop. Richard's voice tightened. Daniel. Daniel stopped a few feet from the stage. You're early, Richard added. Daniel's expression was calm. You forgot to invite me. The reporters sensed something. Phones lifted, cameras zoomed in. Richard forced a laugh. This is a private board matter. Daniel nodded slowly. Then you won't mind if we show everyone the truth. Richard's smile slipped. What truth? Daniel turned to Alex. Go ahead. Alex connected the laptop to the large screen behind the stage. The screen flickered. Emails appeared. Financial transfers. Internal messages. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A reporter shouted, "What is that?" Daniel's voice carried across the room. 3 years of corporate espionage. Richard's face went pale. Turn that off, he snapped. Alex didn't move. Another email appeared on the screen. Richard sending confidential company data to a competitor. The reporters surged forward. Is this real? Mr. Hayes, can you respond? Richard's voice shook with anger. This is fabricated. Daniel stepped closer. Is it? Quote, Alex pulled up the final file. The room fell silent. It was the metadata of the scandal article, the upload record, the internal account that posted it. Richard Hayes. The reporters exploded. You leaked the story? You framed Daniel? Quote, Did you sabotage the company? Richard's control shattered. This is a setup. Daniel's voice was calm. No. He looked directly at the cameras. This is accountability. Security officers suddenly entered the room. 2 of them walked straight toward Richard. The lead officer spoke clearly. Richard Hayes, you are under arrest for corporate espionage, fraud, and market manipulation. The entire room erupted in noise. Reporters shouting. Cameras flashing. Richard struggled as the officers grabbed his arms. You think this saves you? He spat at Daniel. Daniel didn't respond. Richard turned toward Brittany. This is your fault. She met his glare without blinking. No! Her voice was steady. This happened because you underestimated people. Richard laughed bitterly. People? Yes. She stepped forward slightly. You thought power meant money. The cameras caught every word. But real power, she continued, is the moment someone stops being afraid of you. Richard was dragged away, still shouting, still furious. But the room was already turning toward Daniel. Mr. Lawrence, are you reclaiming the company? What happens to CML now? Daniel looked at Brittany, then back at the reporters. For 20 years, he said calmly, I built CML Industries into a global empire. The reporters leaned closer. But I learned something during the 6 months I disappeared. He glanced toward Brittany again. Money builds companies. He paused. But kindness builds people. The room fell quiet. Daniel took a breath. And I've decided that the second one matters more. A reporter frowned. What does that mean? Daniel smiled slightly. It means I'm stepping down. Gasps filled the hall. Stepping down? You just won. Daniel nodded. I know. He reached for Brittany's hand. I spent 20 years chasing success. He squeezed her hand gently. Now I'm going to spend the next 20 years building a life. A reporter asked the obvious question. With her? Daniel didn't hesitate. With her. 3 months later, Rosie's diner was busier than ever, but not because of the scandal. Because people had heard the story about the waitress who fed a homeless man and the billionaire who never forgot it. Inside the diner, Brittany wiped down the counter. Daniel sat in the corner booth, the same booth where everything had started. Except now he looked relaxed, happy. Martha slid a plate of pancakes in front of him. You're still paying this time? She warned. Daniel laughed. Yes, ma'am. Brittany walked over and leaned against the booth. Any regrets? She asked. Daniel looked around the diner, the place where he had been invisible, the place where someone finally saw him. Not one, he said. He reached for her hand, and Brittany squeezed it back, because in the end, the biggest mistake a powerful man can make is forgetting that invisible people are still watching, and sometimes those invisible people are the ones who change everything.